This video is made possible by my patrons on Patreon. Hello everyone, my name is Xiomaro and welcome back to Battlerite. So, just under a week ago, Stunlock Studios revealed details on the Big Patch that they've been teasing for a couple of weeks. Those of you who are still active Battlerite players, or at least still interested in the game, have probably seen this already, but I know there are also a lot of people who've kind of lost touch with Battlerite lately. I'm not gonna lie, these are some pretty big changes. So, for the sake of people who are only interested in the headlines, here's what's changing. Movement speed is being increased across the board, and champion health will be lowered on a case-by-case basis. A new system called the Armory is being added, where you can buy items in between rounds, not unlike the ones from Battlerite Royale or other MOBAs. There's a new ability called Overload being added, which becomes available after an ally dies. It heals you a bit, makes you do a bit more damage, more healing, reduces your cooldowns, but it also makes you take more damage. Basically, it's a way to make those 1v3s and 1v2s more interesting and fast-paced. There will also be map updates to a few of the maps. 2 maps are getting explosive barrels, and 2 maps are getting jump pads. Oh, and just in case you're scratching your head, yes, this is happening in Battlerite Arena, not Royale. And speaking of which, Talon Island, the Battlerite Royale map, is getting some updates too. They're adding 2 new areas to the map and updating some less used areas to have more loot. They're also adding new champions to Battlerite Royale. Okay, maybe not new champions, but they're adding the remaining champions from the arena for the Battlerite Royale free-to-play launch next week. So yeah, if you hadn't heard that already, it's been announced that Battlerite Royale will go free-to-play next week on the 19th of February. And finally, they're going to be adding a battle pass, not unlike the one from Fortnite, which allows you to unlock a bunch of cosmetics each season. So then, let's get a bit deeper into each of these changes and talk about how this might affect the future of Battlerite. Let's start with the arena. So the arena is probably getting the biggest changes here. The movement speed is being increased, something that a lot of people have been asking for a while. The reason that people have been asking for this is because in Bloodline Champions, Battlerite's spiritual predecessor, the movement speed was a lot faster and the projectiles were considerably smaller too. There have been criticisms that Battlerite's combat works kind of like a flowchart. The enemy uses this ability, so I use that ability, and so on. In Bloodline Champions, it was a lot more challenging to even just hit your opponent, and likewise you could get very good at the footsie battles and outplay someone mostly just by outmaneuvering them and out-aiming them. That prevented a lot of the flowcharty nature of Battlerite. Of course, they're not changing it to be exactly like Bloodline Champions, so how this will translate to Battlerite, where the projectiles are still a lot larger, is yet to be seen. And it depends on how much the movement speed will be increased. But overall, I think this will be a very interesting change. If nothing else, it will raise the skill cap significantly. In particular, champions who rely on good game sense and don't have an abundance of iframes should get a good survivability boost from this, if, and that's a big if, your movement is up to scratch. Of course, there's also the lowered health to take into account as well. As I mentioned, some champions will benefit more from the movement speed changes than others, so presumably the champions who benefit more will also have their max health lowered a little more to keep the balance. Honestly, I'm really excited about both of those changes. Those 2 things alone will shake up the meta a lot, but those 2 changes actually seem like insignificant footnotes compared to the addition of the Armory, Overload, and map changes. So let's take a quick look at the Armory. There are no specific details on what each of these items will do yet, although some of them share names or icons from Battlerite Royale, so you can probably have a guess at what they do. The items you buy will not be persistent between rounds, so that means you'll be able to change your loadout on a round-by-round basis. And what's more, you'll be able to take more and more items as the rounds go on, up to a maximum of 3. Just like Battlerite Royale, you have equipment that gives you a constant bonus, and consumables that you need to activate to use. No doubt a meta will emerge, as it often does in these sort of games, but the cool thing with this system is the ability to take things based on your playstyle. Especially with the push towards faster movement and lower health, an extra speed boost or extra health could be really useful. Or if you're the sort of team that likes to set up combos and reset a lot, maybe health potions for the reset or explosive barrels for the burst could be really useful. We'll talk a little more about the Armory once we know more details. Next, let's take a quick look at the Overload ability. Although Although it's not a common criticism from the general population in Battlerite, something that I know has been monitored closely by Stunlock themselves is how often the team that gets the first kill wins. Spoiler alert, the team that gets the first kill pretty much always wins unless you get a fast trade. This is something that I know Stunlock have been eager to balance. One of the most exciting things in other competitive games are clutch plays. Of course, it does happen from time to time, but in Battlerite it's relatively rare compared to other competitive games. That's where the overload ability comes in. When you're in a 1v2 or 1v3, the ability unlocks. When you use it, you get a bit of a heal and a buff that lasts for 8 seconds. During that time, you do more damage, you heal more, your cooldowns recharge faster, and your movement speed increases. However, you also take more damage. It's kind of like a last-ditch effort to clutch out a game. You can already imagine how players like Hot Biscuit, who's already known for being able to win unfavorable fights, could use this ability. And if nothing else, it discourages those annoying croak players who just hop around for a minute to stall a game. An 8-second buff encourages you to either kill fast or die trying. Honestly, it won't stop that kind of thing altogether. People will still try to get their ultimate first and then pop overload, but at least they might actually do something with it now. And the final change for the arena is the map updates. Essentially, Meriko Summit and Blackstone Arena, both day and night versions, are getting explosive barrels added to them. These barrels can be exploded, pulled, pushed, and all sorts of other stuff for some tactical shenanigans. While Daharan and Skyring, again both day and night versions, are getting jump pads. The airtime will be shorter, as will the in-cap time, but other than that, they work the same way as they do in Royale. This is probably the most out there change in my opinion. With the addition of items like this, it makes the difference between maps a lot more apparent. Right now, the difference is basically how close together are the walls? Are there death rooms like Blackstone Night? How choky is the entrance to the middle from spawn? And all that kind of stuff. It has a definite effect on which champions exceed on which maps, but I know from talking to newer or less experienced players that those things aren't really apparent until you've played a fair few games. Explosive barrels and jump pads, on the other hand, yeah, those will definitely set maps apart from the others. Now, before I get into my thoughts on the arena changes, I'm just going to quickly mention the battle pass again. Essentially, it's a paid experience track, not unlike the one from Fortnite, that changes each season and allows you to pay money, in the UK it's £9.49, in order to unlock unique and exclusive cosmetics. Honestly, the whole thing kind of deserves its own video. Not because I don't like it, actually quite the opposite, I think it's a good idea, but I want to keep this video a little more focused on the arena changes. I'll also mention again that Battlerite Royale is going free to play next week. They're adding new areas, rejigging the loot a bit, and adding the remaining champions from the arena. Again, we'll come back to that at another time. But for now, here are my thoughts on the Battlerite arena changes, because honestly, that's what I'm most excited about. First off, every single change, except maybe the overload ability, is something that I know the player base has been asking for quite a long time. The request for movement speed changes has been coming more from the top level players, especially those who played Bloodline Champions, while the addition of the Armory, jump pads, and explosive barrels addresses the very common criticism that Battlerite Arena doesn't have enough depth. The Armory certainly adds an extra layer of depth and strategy. Depending on your team comp or the enemy's team comp, you can maybe shift the scales in your favor by picking appropriate items, or even change items between rounds if the enemies play in a way you didn't expect. As we don't have exact details on the items yet, it's hard to say just how much impact they'll have. But the other cool thing about the items is Stunlock's ability to change the balance of the items to change up the meta beyond just champion changes. Honestly, I think it's gonna throw the balance of the game off sooner or later. Say what you want about Arena and Stunlock, but one thing most people seem to agree on is how well they've balanced their game. I think the Armory is going to throw a spanner in the works. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but alongside the movement speed and health changes, I'm expecting some champions to be thrown out of viability while others become a little stronger than they should be. I mean, I'd be happy to be proven wrong. Like I said, Stunlock are excellent at balancing their games, but all these changes being thrown in one go, that's a lot of new dials to tweak. Once it does get balanced though, I think those extra dials will make it way easier for Stunlock to shake up the meta from season to season. As for the jump pads and explosive barrels being added to some of the maps, my knee-jerk reaction was, ugh. But actually, I think it could be pretty cool. Let me explain. In my head, I see Battlerite as this simple but effective top-down fighter, and I don't want it to turn into a clown fiesta with all these gimmicky items. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, Smash Bros is both silly and competitive, so I don't know, maybe it could work for Battlerite too. Whatever the case, Stunlock needed to do something to keep Battlerite alive, and well, it looks like they're going to deliver. I mean, I'm still waiting for the in-game tournament system that they promised in December, but whatever, I'm kind of over that now. I will definitely see you guys when the big patch drops next week, but until then, let me know down in the comments what you think of the upcoming changes. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please feel free to subscribe for more gaming guides, news, and discussion. And don't forget to check out the links below to Patreon, Discord, and Twitch. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.